Good afternoon, colleagues. Welcome. I'm Darren Sanders. I'm the Liberal Democrat member for Baffins, North Milton and South Copner. I'm also the Cabinet member for Housing and Tackling Homelessness, which is why I'm speaking now. Welcome to this meeting, one and all. Before I begin, I have to go through some safety information and stuff like that. So, as far as housekeeping is concerned, if the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Don't use the lifts. Please assemble at the Queen Victoria statue in Guildhall Square. It's stopped raining, so it might be okay. In order to comply with the fire marshal regulations of the Guildhall Trust, whose building we're using today, anyone who signed in at the reception desk on the ground floor should please sign out when leaving the building. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting is being live streamed. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be on camera, including those making deputations. The good news is that I don't think we have any. Nope, good. So members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they don't wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they've finished. If you don't know how to switch them on, we're always available to help. So, I will now make a series of introductions and I will start on my far left with Alison.
Alison Harper, Local Democracy Officer.
And then I shall go through the back row.
Alan Denford, Finance Manager.
Shane Galvin, Head of Housing Needs Advice and Support.
Jo Bennett, Assistant Director, Housing Need and Supply.
Mark Fitch, Head of Local Authority Housing.
Colette Hill, Assistant Director of Neighbourhoods. Nicola Clanahan, Head of Housing Community Services.
Amy Holmes, Head of Compliance.
Steve Groves, Head of Building Repairs.
Adam Hardwick, Assistant Director Buildings.
Sorry. Did you get that?
You are Greg, and you're from the Residents Consortium, and I claim my fiver.
Mandy Buxley, Resident Consortium.
And I will go on to the equally important people. I was going to say something worse there. Spencer and Derek.
Derek North, Councillor for Cosham and Wirring.
Spencer Gardner, Member for Drayton and Farlington.
And I'll out both Spencer and Derek as I go along and the reason why they're here, as well as being local councillors. Okay, so we're going to start with some apologies. I have apologies from Councillor Raj Ghosh, who is the Labour spokesman on housing and tackling homelessness, and also from James Hill, who's the director. So please, no kids in playground with teacher away. I also have some updates from the Residents Consortium, which for people who don't know is the body that we consult of residents. We consult on pretty much everything, and most of their work you will see as we go along here. I firstly have an apology from Mary Bailey. Mary has served the Residents Consortium absolutely brilliantly, has come here, has given all of us the 5th degree as well, which is equally important. So she's not here, but I understand that she's no longer wanting to take part in various things, so I just wanted formally, Alison, can we put a vote of thanks for Mary in our minutes, and Mandy and Greg, please send our gratitude back to Mary, and also to a person who I only know as Val, who has been newly elected to the Residents Consortium and may come up here and also give us the 5th degree as we go along. So, the next item is whether there are any interests to declare. Only Derek, Spencer and I are allowed to do this. So, Derek.
I am a council tenant, so I will do my best to not be prejudicial in my answers or comments.
That's the diplomatic version. Right, okay, that's Spencer.
None for me, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Spencer. I don't have any either. Okay, so we're going to vary the agenda slightly as some people have personal commitments and things like that, so it's important getting them home rather than wait here for 2 hours. So I shall start with the item 3 on the agenda, which is the Portsmouth Homes Access Policy. I believe it's you do rehearsals, but not with me. So it's Mark who survived the rehearsals. Okay, fire away.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanders. So I'm here to introduce the Portsmouth Homes Access Policy, which is a brand new policy. and I'll go through the report. The recommendations are to approve the policy, which is called Working Together Portsmouth Homes Access Policy, and it is included as an appendix within the report, and it will be implemented with immediate effect. In terms of background, the council owns its stock of social and affordable housing, and we as Portsmouth Homes manage that on behalf of the local authority. We have approximately 15,400 general needs homes, which include sheltered and supported accommodation in Portsmouth, Fareham, Gosport and Winchester, and about 2,000 leaseholders and shared owners. And the scope of the policy covers all of those tenures. Changes to the regulation of the services that we provide were introduced by the Regulator for Social Housing, and were updated consumer standards that increase powers of the Housing Ombudsman Service that have resulted in the need for Portsmouth Homes to create and review its policies, and to ensure that we're compliant with those new regulations and can evidence that we are compliant and that we improve the outcomes of the residents that we provide services for. Obviously the purpose of the policy is to ensure that Portsmouth Homes comply with our statutory, regulatory and contractual obligations within tenancy agreements and leases, and to provide clarity to our residents on how Portsmouth Homes as the landlord will deliver services fairly and consistently. And one of the consumer standards, the safety and quality standard, means that we have to have accurate, up-to-date evidence and understanding of the condition of our homes that reliably informs the provision of good quality, well-maintained and safe homes for its tenants. And therefore it's essential that we are allowed access to those homes so that we can inspect them on a regular basis. And this policy covers access for any reason. So it could be for an asset surveyor to go and do an asset survey on the property. It could be for us to go in and do a gas safety test or electric safety check. And for us in terms of housing management to do a tenancy update visit where we understand the needs of the household, the support needs and who's living in the property. So there are benefits for both us as the landlord, but also a huge amount of benefits for the tenants in terms of allowing us access. In terms of consultation, we, as you rightly have said, we've got a residents consortium. We've also got a policy working group. So this policy has been to the residents policy working group and also on our website, on the consultation page of our website. And feedback from those meetings has that any changes or recommendations have been included in the policy. Obviously, in terms of the reasons for the recommendations, the new policy will support us to ensure compliance with consumer standards and the requirements of the Regulator for Social Housing. The policy will ensure that we can support tenants appropriately and proportionately in terms of access to their homes, and that tenants are supported to move to more suitable accommodation to ensure the efficient and effective use of our stock. And the Portsmouth Homes Access Policy formalises the practice into a policy, and in doing so creates a policy which can be published and shared with the tenants, leaseholders and shared owners for greater transparency and understanding. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Mandy and Greg, do you have any comments on this from the Residents Consortium perspective?
No, I mean, we're quite fortunate because Nicola keeps us up to date with everything, so we understand, and yeah, I don't think you've got any comments.
No, same thing. Everything is sort of passed on to us at the consortium and the other meetings, so we're fairly well informed.
That's lovely. Do you have any comments about this particular policy at all? And if the answer's no, that's also fine.
No, we're fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and sorry for not to be clear. Spencer, do you have any questions or comments on this at all? Right, that's a no. Because, bless you, didn't put your phone on. You didn't put your microphone on, so that now you're on, you see. I can see you're on, you see.
I can confirm that as a no.
That's a no. Excellent. I like this. Derek?
Nothing from me.
Okay, that's fine. So how this, for people who don't know how these meetings work and maybe watching on live stream or whatever, officers give a presentation. The Residents Consortium and my Conservative and Reform spokespeople, who are respectively Spencer and Derek, can ask questions or give opinions. Ultimately, the decision is mine, and I usually sum up before giving my judgment. This is an infringement on people's freedoms, I have to say, to which the answer is sorry. Because, frankly, there are times when, as a landlord, we're going to need to get into people's homes and actually do work, or make sure their electrics are okay, make sure the gas is okay, make sure the home is okay. I'm sorry, but that's something that has to be done. I've had certainly a few complaints, I can't speak for Derek and Spencer, from people who really do object to that idea, but I'm terribly sorry. But we have to do this like any landlord does. So this is I don't like infringing on people's freedoms, but I think this is a responsible thing to do, partly to make sure their place is safe. And I would suggest to any tenants who are a little worried, from my experience, nobody really cares what the place looks like, as long as it's safe. So nobody's going to nick your stuff or anything like that. But I think this is long overdue. I know from discussions with the social housing regulator, this is one of the things that's holding us back from being able to demonstrate full compliance with the new standards which are designed to make people safe. So I think this is long overdue, and so I'm happy to proceed with that. And the recommendations are essentially to approve the new policy as of 13 minutes past 3 on Friday the 8th of November. Okay? Because it does say immediate effect, and that's immediate. Okay? So that's the access policy. We then have a variation to the agenda, as the person presenting has, I understand, some family things to do, and so at this rate may be here at 6 o'clock if we're not careful. So this is the amendment to our allocations policy, which is going to be presented by Shane. However, due to the pre-election period relating to the by-election in Polesgrove, this was due to come to a decision-making meeting on the 30th of September. The meeting did not happen as it was deemed during the pre-election period, and so therefore apparently nothing controversial, allegedly, was allowed through. As the decision was time critical, and in a briefing I had with my opposition colleagues, the decision was effectively taken by the Chief Executive on the 15th of October. So this isn't to decide things, this is basically just to be open and transparent about it, about the change. So not just Eric, Spencer, Raj and me know about it, but everyone knows about it. Shane, apologies for the long intro, but it's just to explain why this is here. Okay?
Saved me a job. Thank you, Councillor Sanders. So this is an information-only report. It is to present a series of amendments that have been made to the policy that governs the allocations of social housing in Portsmouth. And the changes are primarily led by a combination of changes to national legislation and regulations, and some learning that we've acquired over the course of the 1 year the policy's now been in place. So I'll take you through 7 changes that have been made and the reasons they were recommended in the first place. Firstly, was a change to the exemption from requiring a local connection for former members of the armed forces, and to remove the within 5 years of discharge element. This change was recommended to give effect to national guidance and associated regulations in this area, and was one of the time-critical elements of this change to the allocation policy, which meant a decision was required. Secondly, 2 further groups of applicants have been added to that list of applicants who are exempt from requiring a local connection in order to join the housing register. Firstly, people who are in need of a move in connection to experiencing domestic abuse. And secondly, people who are aged under 25 who have previously been an eligible or relevant child in accordance with the 1989 Children Act. And again, this is to give effect to national guidance and law as set out in the report. Thirdly, a change as detailed at 3.3 of the report is to change some wording from the council to Portsmouth City Council when describing which care leavers are entitled to additional priority on the housing register. And this was a change that was required to give clarity to applicants that it is Portsmouth care leavers who are prioritised by the policy in this way. Fourthly, was an addition to the banding scheme, so the level of priority different applicants are awarded, so that an urgent level of priority is awarded to care leavers aged 18 to 25 who have been assessed as being ready to live independently and meet the other criteria set out at 3.4 of the report. This was a change that was recommended to support the well-being of young people who've been in the care of Portsmouth City Council. It's a need that's previously been met by the direct nomination scheme associated with the allocations policy, whereby a number of properties are set aside per year for certain groups of applicant. But this was a change that was recommended to remove that numerical cap and to ensure the future housing of those young people is led by an assessment of their need rather than a numerical cap set at the beginning of the year. Fifthly, the change to allow registered providers of social housing, landlords, to restrict certain applicants who can be allocated a given property where such a restriction is a reasonable step as part of a building safety risk assessment. Any such restriction would need to be proportionate and lawful in terms of the Equality Act 2010 provisions, but it's a change that is required to allow social landlords to give effect to their statutory duty to prevent and mitigate building safety risks. The sixth change was to provide additional clarity to applicants as to how their waiting time on the housing register is calculated, and that is namely that it's the length of time continuously spent on the register within your current level of priority or higher level of priority. And this was, again, to provide that additional level of clarity required as we've learned over the 1 year of the policy. And lastly was to add 2 scenarios whereby an allocation of a property may be suspended or withdrawn. Firstly, where there's been a material change to the circumstances of the household, whereby it may have affected the assessment of that household's need. And secondly, where a landlord can evidence that an allocation would contravene a building safety assessment, which is again to give those social landlords the ability to act on their statutory duty to prevent and mitigate building safety risks. And that is a final change, so any questions are of course welcome.
Okay, thank you for that, Shane. Greg or Mandy, do you have any questions or comments at all about this policy?
No.
No, none from me either.
Okay, that's lovely. Derek, do you have any questions or comments about this policy?
Nothing from me.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Spencer, do you have any questions or comments about this policy?
I don't, thank you.
The bad news is I do. Otherwise, it's going to be quick. Thank you very much for this. I have to say some of this is certainly coming up in the casework I get from people who basically want to move. And it's really, really hard to find out reasons to tell them the truth, which is that it's very, very difficult. So I think some of the priorities here reflect priorities of the administration of which I'm part, which is to give our veterans and people in the armed forces a good go, giving them a good home. I know at the council meeting was probably been 3 hours discussing how rubbish the MOD is, housing, which I think we're all going to enjoy. So I think it's absolutely crucial that we give our armed forces that, and it's not purely because it's Remembrance Weekend. Again, survivors of domestic abuse and care leavers, important people who, if they're living in our HMOs, we can't divulge the addresses of the HMOs for obvious reasons. And I think that's right. So I think, again, this prioritises us. This is something we're doing as prioritising as part of an administration, which is incredibly helpful. And then finally, also issues around, for instance, when an adult child leaves the home. Again, that sort of stuff sounds incredibly bureaucratic, but actually matters a lot to people. So I think those are really helpful things. I have one question. Obviously this has been approved already, so I can't do any of that. But we said last year that changing the allocations policy would mean that more people will get moved. Has that happened? There can be a 3-letter answer or a 2-letter answer.
I've got a 3-letter answer and a longer one if you're interested.
I am happy with the 3 and the slightly longer, yes.
Yes, we have seen more moves, and if you would be interested in a more detailed breakdown as to how that policy's worked over the first year, we could bring more information back to a future meeting.
I'm going to overrule Derek and Spencer, not consult, but I am. So, I think it's right, because one of the problems, one of the pieces of misinformation that exists is there's a lot of pressure on the system, and we ain't meeting the demand. And we're not meeting everybody's concerns, we know that. But any way we can actually try and make sure that more people move to the right place for them is good, and any good work we're doing should be made in public. So yes is the answer. Do you have anything else?
No, not for me, thanks.
Oh, I like short answers. That's great. That's not like Tuesday's council meeting, I tell you. That's going to be short, isn't it? Alison, I think that all I have to do is note the report because we've all done it already. So thank you very much, and thank you for that, Shane. So we shall return to the general agenda, which goes back to item 4, which again is not for a decision, but basically it's just been in the interest of being transparent about the future, which is the Portsmouth Homes Buildings Project 2030 overview. Adam.
Thank you. The report is an information-only report that provides an overview of a significant piece of work that we're bringing forward under the umbrella of Portsmouth Homes Buildings Project 2030. By way of brief background, following the tragic Grenfell Tower fire, there's been a raft of new legislation which has been introduced to social housing. One of those aspects is obviously the Social Housing Regulation Act. Following that introduction, we undertook self-referral and received a C3 regulatory judgment in January of this year. And following that, we developed an improvement plan, which we've been working to in the subsequent months. Since that improvement plan has been put in place, there have been further legislative changes through the introduction of RABS law in October and also updates to electrical safety standards. We've also recently undertaken government consultation about further changes that could be coming. Those are around minimum energy efficiency standards and also potential revision of the Decent Home Standard. So due to the current changes that have been introduced and then potential ones in the future, we've taken it as an opportunity to review our current improvement plan and look more broadly. So Buildings Project 2030 is a strategic plan which aims to proactively address the impact of current and future legislative changes, ensuring by the end of 2030 all major legal and regulatory requirements have been met and that we've got robust plans in place to help manage and mitigate any future changes or aspects which may be coming along. So in terms of a brief overview of what's in the plan, I'll just run through at a high level. So in terms of stock condition surveys, we have been proactively undertaking stock condition surveys now, and we're also appointing an external consultant to provide additional resources to ensure that we meet our target of 100% stock condition survey of our stock by September 2026. This piece of work will also include energy performance certificates for all of the properties. Regarding electrical inspections, we've accelerated our existing electrical programme, and we're in a good place to have all of our properties with compliant electrical inspection by May 2026. So that'll be every property will have had an inspection within 5 years. With regards to our building safety remediation programme, in March of this year we had an approval for a 7-year programme to address all the actions coming through from that. As part of the Buildings Project 2030 umbrella, we've reviewed that programme and we're looking to accelerate that to have that completed within 5 years. Alongside this, we've developed a low-rise remediation programme to complete fire risk assessment actions to our low-rise stock. That is planned to run concurrently with our building safety programme, and again ensuring by 2030 all of those project actions are completed. Regarding minimum energy efficiency standards, as part of our stock surveys, like I mentioned, we'll be doing energy performance certificates as part of that. That will allow us to have improved knowledge of our stock and understand where properties meet or don't meet EPC C level. And then from that, we'll be able to develop plans to understand works necessary to remediate those buildings and the sort of costs associated. With regarding decent homes, this is potentially an aspect which will be updated further along from government. However, by completing the stock surveys, addressing sort of our building safety actions and general compliance, etc., we should be in a better position that when any further changes do come along, we are well placed to proactively respond to that and make sure that we are compliant with decent homes. And then the final point is All of this, we're currently in the process of updating our asset management strategy. We've appointed consultants to work with us to do that. So a lot of these work streams will feed into that, and then again provide a strategic long-term plan to help manage our stock. From a financial perspective, obviously a lot of these works will have a significant impact on our stock. Some of these are budgeted already, so we've allowed for the stock surveys, the ICRs, etc. And like I said, the building safety remediation programme has been previously approved, and then we are, as an ongoing piece of work at the moment, to sort of assess some of the further financial impacts of the works proposed. And then finally, in terms of resident engagement, I think with all of these work streams, it goes as a given that we will consult with residents, and where any works directly impact residents, we'll obviously make sure that we do full engagement and consultation around that, and where possible look to amend our sort of works to minimise risk and any disruption to residents as well. That's it. And any questions?
I don't know, so I'll ask. Mandy and Greg, do you have any questions or comments about this policy?
As a former resident of Horatio House, I have to say I'm very pleased that this is going ahead, and it's going ahead with new regulations, which obviously weren't in effect when we were unceremoniously removed from Horatio House. I'm now in a low-rise, so I'm interested to see how things go in the low-rises. I feel a bit safer there.
No, I've got no comments.
Declaration of interest, Greg. My mother lived in what I know as Solihull House, and so also was part of the programme that led to the removal. And I had to tell her, which was one of the more interesting afternoons of my life. So I'll come back to those comments, but I just had to declare that interest, and you were not alone.
I knew your mother in Horatio House, and I missed her in Blenworth House, but I knew her in Horatio House.
Oh, the perils of being a council estate kid. Right. Okay. And another council tenant, young Derek. Any questions or comments, sir?
Only one question. Obviously, being a council tenant myself, are we notifying residents by letters of as and when they're going to be coming out to do the inspections and stuff like that, or are you just going to be emails, or what are you doing?
Yeah, we had the pre-start meeting with the consultants that we're going to be using to do the stock condition surveys, and we've agreed there's a formal letter that will be written to every single resident prior to the surveys actually taking place, and then that will include frequently asked questions and other contact details. So if anybody's got any queries, they can easily contact us.
Thank you.
Else? Thank you for that, Derek. Spencer, did you have any questions or comments at all?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Spencer. Okay, just a few comments of my own, basically to give some context as to why. Adam's outlined some of it. But the truth is, folks, is that there are three things that are all coming together at the same time. The first is the changes in the law, which, frankly, it took the horror of Grenfell Tower to occur. Shouldn't have happened that way. People were too lax. But they're here. And so the law is changing rightly. There's also a change in terms of the impact of the new regulators, both the building safety regulator and also the social housing regulator, and some of the impact of those things we will have as we go through this meeting, and I'm sure a few more. So those two things together mean a lot of things and a lot of changes, and that will mean a change in the priorities and the budgets that will occur over the next few years. The third aspect is that most of the stock is 30, 35, 40 years old, 50 years old maybe. And so it's time that we actually have an objective look at our asset management strategy. Those three things are coming together all at the same time. And one of our jobs is to try and make sure that we, as you've rightly pointed out, Derek, engage our residents properly and inform our residents properly. I know the team has been into Ladywood House, for instance, to talk about some work early on so that we can actually plan to do things rather than wait until the last minute to turn up, which really ruins residents' lives a lot. So those three things together are just an outline of where we're going to go, how we're going to get there, and the things we're going to do to get there will come in through over the next few weeks, months, and probably years. But it's important that we outline to everybody, our residents in particular, the direction of travel now, and outline the issues that we face now, so that because it's important to be open and honest with people. So although I may not like much of this, we're going to have to do it. So I want to work with all council, my 41 council colleagues, to try and make sure that they can help us on this journey, although several of them will no doubt complain, but that is life and democracy. So on that basis, I'm happy to note the report, Alison. Essentially, yep. And again, Adam, I know you will carry on updating us as we go along, and I think that'll be very, very helpful. So thank you for that. The next one is related to this, which is an interim report on the progress of Portsmouth Homes Council Housing Maintenance and Improvements Programme 2025-2026. In other words, how are we making people's homes better? Adam, are you doing this as well? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, so this is again an information-only report which basically provides a half-year update on the Council Housing Maintenance and Improvements Programme for 25-26. The report includes details of high-level works undertaken and expenditure, an industry update, and again just an overview of some of the upcoming challenges that we have. So by way of background, in March 2025, budget allocations were approved of just over 31 million for revenue expenditure and just over 30 million for capital expenditure. In terms of progress on the revenue side, you'll see in the report that it outlines some sort of key facts and figures about where we've been spending the money, how we've been performing, etc. Sort of just some key points to note really. The overall number of repairs, in terms of number, has increased by 55% as against the same period last year. However, it's important to note that due to our new repairs and maintenance policy, we've changed how we record repairs now. So this basically means that previously we would have put multiple repairs on one single repair ID. With our new policy, every repair that's raised is done on one repair ID. So it basically generates a high number on paper, but the overall quantum of repairs is largely similar. One area where we have seen a significant increase in demand is around voids, and this is obviously coming through from the change to the allocation policy. So voids in years around 45% higher than the same period for last year, and obviously that has an impact on expenditure as well. In section 3.4 of the report, you'll see there's some generally some statistics in there around our sort of compliance activities, and again linked to our improvement programme. You'll see that I think across the board really we've undertaken more compliance activities than we did in the same period last year, and obviously with the electrical inspections you can see there's been a significant increase in the number completed. Section 4 covers off capital expenditure. You'll see, I think in 4.5, it outlines high levels information around sort of kitchens, bathrooms, boilers, etc. that we've replaced in year. And there's also some further information around sort of larger capital projects, and more detail is provided on that in Appendix A. In terms of Section 5, which covers summary of expenditure, we're currently forecasting that on the revenue side, we're anticipating a £2 million overspend. This is largely due to our acceleration of our electrical inspection programme, with that cost being met through reserves. With regards to capital expenditure, we're forecasting an overspend on our responsive capital. That is largely due to the additional volume of voids going through the system, and obviously the expenditure attributed to that. However, when considering our overall capital budget, we're anticipating delivering the works within that currently, and that is due to some of the challenge we've experienced on some of our building safety programme. So that expenditure will be it will roll on into next year basically. Section 6 provides a high-level industry update. Generally, through the Building Cost Information Service, the BCIS, they're reporting that the construction industry is stabilising relatively. However, the key area for sort of pressure and growth is around the cost of labour. We've seen increases in labour through national insurance and national living wage increases. And there's also a general pressure across the industry with a labour shortage, and that's both in terms of trade roles and also professional roles as well. We've sort of had conversations with other service providers, and I think a fairly similar picture to the national picture, although probably the only main difference is in terms of actual labour supply. I think locally at the moment it's okay. They're managing to source sufficient trades to undertake the works. Section 7 covers off some sort of potential pressures and mitigations that we have upcoming. It obviously covers off the sort of increase in repair numbers and the voids. And you'll see in there I've put a table which shows the sort of general compliance with our new repairs and maintenance policy. On emergency repairs within 24 hours, we're sort of over 96%. Over 94% for urgent repairs, and routine repairs is around 85%. There's definitely some work that we still need to do there to improve those figures. We want to get those, particularly on the emergency and the urgent repairs, get them near to 100%. I think some of the main challenges are it's been quite a significant change in our approach to how we take repairs and manage those repairs. So I think our actual performance is probably higher than that, but we need to do more work in terms of how we're recording that to make sure it's more consistent. There's obviously some financial pressures from the survey work and the electrical works, like I said. However, they are sort of accounted for, and obviously we'll use reserves to manage those. The void pressure through the additional number, through talking with Shane and Joe's team, we anticipate that volume of voids will continue, so we're going to have to work in the future to try and ensure that we're budgeting for that. There's also potential pressures coming through the introduction of Arab's law. So not only does that place requirements on us, which we are doing already and have been, but it means that we'll have to respond to certain issues in certain timescales, and also with our accelerated stock condition programme, there's more chances that we will come across potential issues in properties. So obviously, if we do, we'll obviously remediate those issues as they arise. And then obviously, there's challenges with in terms of the building safety remediation and low-rise programmes in terms of the scale of those. But obviously, we're working to resource against that and make sure we can deliver that as per the sort of previous report, Project 2030, in those timescales. I think that's probably the key things, really. If there's any questions from anyone.
Okay, thank you for that, Adam. Greg and Mandy, do you have any questions or comments at all?
The only thing that I picked up on was that the voids are up by 45%, you said. And how could you possibly bring that down? Because obviously, as you're aware, there's a lot of people waiting for housing. Those voids, obviously, you're liable to paying the council tax on while they're empty. So have you got any plans to bring that number down and obviously then get people housed quicker?
What we're saying is that the number of voids that we've received has increased by 45%, which in itself is a good thing because it shows that the allocation policy is working by allowing people to move into appropriate homes. That there's more availability. So our key challenge is making sure that we're turning those voids around quickly, so that they're not off. We're not losing rent on them, and obviously the sooner they're refurbished, people can move in. So the increase in the bigger picture is not a bad thing. The challenge for us is that just means there's more work to do, so it costs more money, which we need to make sure we're budgeting for.
Okay. I mean, I did know of a void property that was empty for about 8 weeks, and there was only a couple of minor things that had to be done. It was somebody I know that was allocated it. So would that maybe bring that work forward to get it done quicker, to get it suitable quicker?
I mean, we're all, I don't know, because it depends on that individual case about what the allocation was and why that held up for that period of time. We're certainly working with the contractors all the time, looking at the time that they get the keys and then they complete the work. But obviously the other factor in there is that somebody's available to go into that property, and that's where we work hand in hand with the management team as well. So it's difficult on one individual case to say, oh, that's the reason why, without knowing the details of it. But we have got a range of measures and working with the contractors and working with the housing management team to look at those measures to make sure that for us, it's getting those end-to-end times down as low as we possibly can, because then we don't want properties left empty.
Yeah, that's lovely, and thank you both very much. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask, a lot of the properties have had the foam insulation put in, and the foam is gone, so now it's just two walls with nothing insulation. Is there any plan to deal with that, or are they better as they are now without the foam?
Well, the only bit to clarify, I don't believe we've ever put foam into any of our cavities. We've probably put rock wool, like mineral fibre, into some of the cavities.
Well, there are tiny holes
Yeah,
in the wall.
no.
So it must have been very small.
They must have had cavity wall. Most of any of our properties that could have cavity wall insulation undertaken have had that done. I know that extensively we've done a lot of rock wool, mineral fibre, blown fibre insulation into those cavities. There have been occasional issues where we've taken cavity wall insulation out, but obviously what we're always trying to do is, if there's a problem, we will address that. And if it's appropriate to re-insulate those properties, that's what we would do. Clearly, the bit that Adam talked about there was there's a big, obviously the minimum energy standards is going to drive us to look at any measures that we can do to improve the efficiency of any of the council properties.
It's just that with all the damp and mould things that are going on now, I just like to feel that we're not prone to it and increasing the chance of damp and mould because we've got the hollow walls.
The other bit to point out is probably a future report as well, is that the project team are doing a lot of work on getting energy funding to do external wall insulation on properties that can't have cavity wall insulation. So I think there's a lot of other work that we are doing, and some of the condition surveys and the work we're doing over the next year will help us build those business cases and understand our stock about where we need to focus our effort and our money to make sure that we're improving the properties.
That's great to hear. As someone who's cold all the time, it is an issue because, you know, our floor now, when we're thinking, are we going to get mould, are we going to get... And it's nice to know that it's all in hand.
Just one further bit.
Feel free. I do not mind.
Because as you keep talking, I keep thinking of other things we're doing. The 12,000 stock condition surveys that we're undertaking, all of those we've commissioned them to do an energy performance certificate on all of those as well. So again, that further builds that bit over the next year, is really understanding the condition and the performance of our stock, so that we can plan over the next sort of 10, 15, 30 years, so that we know where we need to focus that effort.
Thank you. I'll also return to the issues you both raised when I do my summing up as well. So thank you very much for that. Spencer, do you have any questions or comments at all?
None for me, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Derek, do you have any questions or comments at all?
Nothing from me.
Okay, bad news, I do. I want to start with both of the points that the Residents' Consortium have raised. With regards to the voids, when we resumed control in 2018, it took about 10 weeks, 11 weeks to turn around a void property. On average, that's now 5. I say average because some take shorter and some take longer. But that's a distinct improvement. I understand your point, Mandy, because it's always worrying when you see properties that are empty, but they're empty because people are moving to other ones. And that's why there's a lot more work doing that. And you're absolutely right. The key thing is to make sure that the end-to-end time, as Steve has outlined, is as quick as possible, as fast as possible. It won't be the same day, but the idea is to make it as fast as possible so that we can put people into the homes where they want to go. But it is the other side of the allocations changes that we made. As far as your points, Greg, are concerned, many of our blocks simply weren't built with the idea of, you know, making sure that your kids have got a decent planet to live on, and environmental issues, and certainly there was no suggestion of the link between a greener home and cheaper bills. None of that. I think that's one of the things that we will find out as we go along, as we do these stock condition surveys. And that's going to require some honest choices about what to do. But the truth is many of these blocks weren't built with that in mind. And that's one of the issues that we now have to face. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the money coming in from government about this. There's one source of money that was £1.3 million for 31 councils, which meant that we could probably do up a home in Portsmouth, which is an interesting use of money. And I'm sure the team will be even more imaginative in terms of getting that. But this is the other side, to be honest, in a wider sense, this is the other side of the report that we've just had on the future, because this is the present. Everything that all the regulations, all the legal changes and everything else, this is the impact that it has. And there's going to be some difficult decisions and some people are not going to be happy. Sorry, but that's the life we live in. All of the repairs comes out of people's rents. Rents, the Labour government has chosen to continue with the Tory rent cap, which is great because we've got 10 years worth of certainty of money, but it does mean that there is not the freedom to provide the money we want to do the repairs that we want. That's a real problem. Luckily, this account is immune thus far from the potential nightmare of forced mergers with other councils. We wait and see to make sure that continues. So there are those issues, and those issues are there, and that's why this report is here. I've got one question for our finance person, Mr. Denford, which is around some of the money that's occurring and some of the changes that you've outlined. There's a suggestion that in the budget, the Chancellor may cut income tax and increase national insurance by the same amount of money, so rebalance things. Would that have a positive or negative impact on this account, or would it have no impact at all? Or is it too early to tell?
I think it's slightly too early to tell because actually we don't know what is going to be
Nobody
announced.
seems to know at the moment. That probably includes the Chancellor.
So I'll be listening on the 26th of November like everyone else.
That is the politest evasive answer I've had in years. Thank you for that, Alan. I'm sure we all will. I might be watching it as well. But I was interested because of the increase in employer national insurance, particularly, which may be a cost as we go along if the Chancellor decides to go down that route from the Resolution Foundation. Just one other small thing. I'm delighted, by the way, that the government has changed the Decent Home Standard, and it's as a result of the lobbying of this administration and this council, who for years have been a lone voice in the wilderness to say that being forced to replace your kitchen or your stove or your oven every 5 years, even if it's good, was rubbish. Successive Labour and Conservative governments ignored that, and I'm delighted that this government has actually listened to some common sense for a change and changed that so it's now based around how good the appliance is as opposed to how long it's been stuck there. And I think that will lead to better budgeting and better homes. So just wanted to thank the team for their lobbying for that and for the Labour government for listening. So on that basis, Alison, I'm happy to note this report, and obviously, Adam, we need to keep you updated as we go along. Okay? Thank you very much. The next report is an update on compliance with housing standards. Nicola.
Thank you. So the purpose of this report, which is an information-only report and is a 6-month update, which was slightly delayed due to the pre-election period, is to update Cabinet members on Portsmouth Homes' progress and actions following the Regulator of Social Housing's judgment in January 25, to provide an overview of compliance with new legislative requirements, revised consumer standards and the improvement plan that was set out, summarise outcomes from the provider improvement meetings with the Regulator of Social Housing, and to present the latest tenant satisfaction measures and areas of ongoing focus for the service. So since March 24, the Regulator of Social Housing's consumer regulation remit now includes local authority landlords, introducing stricter standards for safety, transparency, accountability and tenant engagement. Following a self-referral, Portsmouth Homes received a C3 regulatory judgment in January 25, identifying areas for improvement against the safety and quality standard in fire safety, electrical inspections, stock condition surveys and repairs service standards. Our self-assessment also identified areas of focus around other areas around antisocial behaviour, management of complaints, handling, data use, etc. New legislative requirements that have been announced since our regulatory judgment have included those covered by Adam in his report, electrical installation condition reports, damp and mould, and also around competency and conduct standards. Monthly provider improvement meetings with the regulator have been held since March 25 with positive feedback on governance, transparency and our improvement plan. So section 5 of the report sets out some of the areas of progress against the 4 areas that were set out in our regulatory judgment. That table is up until the 31st of July, which was relevant to the report as it was written. Appendix A sets out the most up-to-date position, as is possibly more relevant for you to look at this stage. But for all areas, there's been improvement across our compliance, which the regulator has looked favourably upon. The next section of the report just focuses on some of the challenges that we've had in progressing against the judgment, particularly around the recruitment and retention of skilled professionals in building safety, managers, surveyors, and at one point electricians, which just delayed progress, which has now since been resolved. The next section of the report provides a brief update on the wider areas of self-assessment to the regulator, and in this meeting we have reports on complaints and on antisocial behaviour improvement plans, so those will be covered in those meetings. Under the Transparency, Influence and Accountability Standard, all social housing landlords with over 1,000 homes must report tenant satisfaction measures to the regulator each June. And the next section of the report just covers off the tenant satisfaction measures that Portsmouth Homes achieved for 24-25. That included overall satisfaction of 83.6%, which was above the sector average, high repairs and safety satisfaction. Our lowest were around complaints handling, and there was some issues of note around the number of antisocial behaviour cases and also our complaints turnaround time. So from those tenant satisfaction measures and other issues, that informs an action plan which was published in the annual report and which goes out in the summer house talk to all residents. And our strategic priorities over the 12 months were to continue the delivery of the regulatory judgment improvement plan, preparing for external audit and inspection, accelerating compliance with new legal requirements, implementing the new competence and conduct standard, improving digital access and data quality, and also preparing for local government reorganisation. I apologise. So section 7 just outlines meetings that we've had with the regulator. So those have included, at the point of the report, were 5 meetings, which included an in-person meeting, and there was a walkabout around Somerstown so that they could see the variety of the stock that we have. And also the regulator representatives met with the leader, the chief executive, and yourself, Councillor Sanders, just to ensure themselves around the governance of that. One of those, the meetings have been incredibly positive and productive with clarity on expectations. And one of those areas is around decent homes calculation and ensuring that HHSRS assessments inform decent homes. So in our tenant satisfaction measures reporting for the 24-25 year, we were basing our calculation on information that we knew about our stock and partial assessment, whereas now we've had clarity from the regulator around expectations that decent homes has to be calculated with a full HHSRS assessment, and we've changed our reporting and recording for the ongoing basis.
Nicola, thank you very much for that. Greg, Mandy, do you have any comments or questions about that?
No, I don't.
No, Greg?
No, I don't either. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Derek, do you have any questions or comments at all?
Nothing from me,
No.
thanks.
Spencer? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this report. The next 5 are essentially interlinked reports, effectively. So we're doing them separately, but they should all be read together, as it's just a way of delivering on housing standards. The key thing is that it's important that people feel content with what we're doing, and the tenant satisfaction measures are a very good way of doing that. I note that our tenant satisfaction measures remain about 10 to 15 and even occasionally 20 points higher than the national average. That's not bad. There will always be problems and there will always be issues, but even things like complaints handling, we appear to be above the national average in terms of people who are satisfied with it, and that's the bit that's not good enough. So we'll obviously have a more detailed breakdown, I believe, in the coming months of the tenant satisfaction measures, but the early headlines in the housing press look really rather good for us compared with everyone else. And it's important because we want to try and make sure people are happy in their own homes. It's their lives. We're providing them a home. So I'm delighted with this report. So the tenant satisfaction measures are the most important things. One small thing, when the leader and I met the social housing regulator, we stated that, again, the idea of inspecting a place, a council 2 years before it's going to get scrapped, or even 12 months before it's going to get scrapped, might not be the most efficient use of time or resources. We wait to see their outcome. The real problem I see with the situation is not us necessarily, but the building safety regulator. In the report, it says one project took 40 weeks to approve. 40. That is simply not good enough. We understand they're now asking councils to provide people to help them get the figures down. A perhaps better system might be in place. But that is a real concern in terms of the building work we're going to carry forwards. Real risk, and I think it's one of the real risks we have. And the regulator is certainly more than aware of that. But aside from that, that's reasonable. We'll wait to see, Nicola, the full tenant satisfaction measures when they come out to see whether what I've said is true or not. And if not, I apologise. Now, saves time. But all in all, it's an honest explanation of the situation where we're at. And more work needs to be done, but it's all going in the right direction, I think. So, Alison, I note that report, if that's all right. And so we go into now, as I said, this series of interlocking reports, which are all linked to it. The first of which deals with something our tenants are really worried about, which is antisocial behaviour.
Yep, that's me.
Colette.
So this again is an information-only report, and the purpose of this report is to update you on the Portsmouth Homes ASB improvement plan and to demonstrate the progress that we've achieved to date. The report references how we should prevent, identify and manage ASB. It also highlights changes we've made to the roles and responsibilities of the ASB team, updates we've made to our database that we use to case manage, and also the move that we made with the ASB advisors being allocated to geographical areas. So there's like a dedicated ASB advisor for different areas to support the housing officer team. The report goes on, as Nicola mentioned, to set out she's already mentioned the TSM information. It's worth noting that the increase in cases per 1,000 homes, we've had a look into that because we're already high and then we've gone even higher. But that's due to better recording of one-off issues. So perhaps if something happened once, we might not always have recorded it in the past, but we are doing that now to make sure we've got a proper record. And the improved practice of opening separate cases for counter-allegations. We used to it all would end up on one case, and it was very difficult to work out what exactly was happening. So we're representing those slightly differently now. Section 3.9 refers to the dissatisfaction that's been expressed with the Portsmouth Homes approach to handling ASB. We do review all the feedback we get from our customer satisfaction surveys that we carry out following a case closure, and we're ensuring that this information is informing where we look for our case reviews. So we're learning from the feedback we get from our residents. 4.4 highlights the resident scrutiny panel work. In the summer, the residents wrote a letter in House Talk to all their fellow residents, explaining about the expectations of behaviour, how to be a good neighbour, and also encouraging other residents to report issues to us so that we can deal with them, which is really positive. Section 5, our self-assessment led to our improvement plan, which we reported to you, Councillor Sanders, in February. At the time, I told you we would complete the actions almost straight after the meeting. It was like, I think we had about a week left. And we have completed those actions. But we are constantly trying to improve, and we've since added some additional issues based on our learning. So we found some other things where we thought we could improve. This has included an improved training offer, which was delivered in July. The learning from the TSM feedback and our customer satisfaction feedback, Sally, Mark and I now share that at the tenancy management group with all the managers so that they can share that learning with their teams and keep an eye out for anything that, any of the learning, make sure everyone's improving all of the time. And we also noted from our case reviews that sometimes there were delays in serving antisocial behaviour NOSPs, which is a notice of seeking possession. And so we work with our legal team so that now our ASB advisors are all trained to prepare NOSPs, which has reduced delays in issuing actions against those causing ASB. We've also noted the Ombudsman Spotlight Report, so that's where the Ombudsman sends out their learning to housing organisations, and we'll shortly be bringing we're going to separate the ASB policy from the hate crime policy. They're previously all in one, which is what the Ombudsman has suggested is best practice, and we've done a consultation with residents and they've agreed with that, so we'll be bringing those to you shortly. Our customer satisfaction does show improvement, our figures and our feedback, which is positive, and we'll continue to canvass our residents once we've closed an ASB case. The case review process, in Section 8, we talk about case review processes. This is now embedded, which is a really positive improvement to our sort of oversight of case management. And the learning from this has fed into the next steps, which I'll come on to at the end. So our next steps include the new hate crime policy will be brought to your December meeting, I think, Councillor Sanders. We have set up some case review workshops for managers which start this month, which is to make sure that we're all looking for the same things. But this is especially important as we move to the new management structure. You'll be aware Sally in her role has made some changes to the housing service structure. So we're going to review the case review workshops with some of the new managers and just make sure everyone's doing what they need to be doing, and we anticipate bringing you a further report in September, Councillor Sanders.
Excellent, I look forward to it. Thank you very much, Colette. Greg and Mandy, do you have any comments at all, or questions?
It's a perennial problem, the antisocial behaviour, and we get a lot of people that come to the residents' meetings, and they're very worried about the level, and they say that they're not getting anything done about it. And I've taken to questioning policemen whenever I see them, which is not that often, and they actually have said they have a problem because the number of available police has dropped, because in the past you had a policeman and a PCSO. PCSO was sort of a way into the police force without going through the normal way. PCSO is now a job in its own right. So the police tend not to have that extra person, and so they're spread rather thinly. And that's one of the reasons why it's more difficult to deal with, because that presence is at least a deterrent, if nothing else. But it's everywhere now. In the street, we seldom see policemen in the city centre anymore, unless there's something serious going on. And when I spoke to them, they said they come if there is an actual event going on. Otherwise, they don't patrol anymore. And, you know, I think we all suffer a little bit from not having them around.
You don't have to say anything to that. I might say a little bit later on, but you don't have to say anything to that because that may get into the political realm, which is not fair.
No, and that's fine. So if the police have said that to you, then I won't make a comment on that. But we have had some additional funding in Portsmouth for community wardens and the police to carry out additional ASB patrols. So the OPCC has given us some additional funding, and we have been carrying those out. And some of those are in areas where our Portsmouth homes are. So areas in Buckland and Fratton, we've got specific ASB patrols that are ongoing at the moment. As Darren said, I won't comment on the police availability, but we do have a really strong partnership working with the police. And I think that what we're finding is that they always attend our multi-agency meetings. They take part in our community, our CTCG. I always get the words around the wrong way, but our community tasking coordinating group, that's it. And they're always present. And we have got our antisocial behaviour manager and our head of community safety and myself. I meet with them regularly, but we're on the police call every single day. So we get a police briefing every single day, and we're able to raise things that might be happening. That if there was real serious antisocial behaviour happening in a Portsmouth home, we've got a direct link into the police. So please be assured that the police are still working really closely with us, and the multi-agency approach is really strong in Portsmouth. So that does really help. I do appreciate sometimes antisocial behaviour can seem like it's going on for a while before we get any traction with it, but we almost need to evidence that it's a problem before we can start to take action, which I know can be really frustrating for us as well. So I do understand, but I don't know if that reassures you or not really.
If it doesn't, I don't blame you, but I'll come back to that later.
We don't have such a big problem with antisocial behaviour. We're a small block and we're right on Lake Road, and they tend to go to other areas where they can do more damage. So we're actually fairly lucky where I am, but it's the other tenants who come and say they're having problems, and mainly the bigger blocks where you've got a large number of people. But I've interacted with the police because they're actually frequent visitors to our block, not all negatively. And yeah, there do seem to be a lot more around now and doing a lot more. Sometimes rather too many turn up for one job, which does tend to make things look a little bit more serious than they are.
Yeah, I was quite interested when you were saying that, I mean, obviously ASB is a major problem, we all know that. I live in the north of the city and it's getting quite nasty up there too. But I was also very pleased when you said that you're actually making it two separate issues, hate crime and ASB. And I'm very, very interested, if it's in December, to hear your feedback from that. Thank you.
Okay. So, anything else? No. Okie doke. Oh, you turned it on as well. You're being a professional here.
Upsetting for them, you know, and there's really nothing you can do about that unless there's someone there at the time. I've told them to carry the phone and call me. I don't know if it will work, but I'll have a go.
Thank you for that, both of you. I was born in Lamport. Derek.
Just a quick one. If any antisocial behaviour is reported by residents or anything like that on numerous occasions, how many attempts would they take, sort of thing? So how many complaints and then officers to come out, and then what happens after that?
Well, what should happen is we should take every report of antisocial behaviour seriously and engage with the complainant to understand a bit more about it. Usually we would carry out a risk assessment to understand how it's making the resident feel and if there's anything else we needed to do. And we should be engaging with the people causing the ASB as soon as we get a complaint, really. And so there'll be a variety of different things. Sometimes people tell us and they say they don't want us to do anything at this point in case it's a one-off. So we might not in that case, but we can sometimes find another reason to go around someone's house and understand what's going on. So you shouldn't have to complain lots and lots of times. It should be the first time you complain to us, we should be really engaging with you to understand it better and setting out an action plan with you about which explains what we're going to do about the ASB, what steps we're going to take, and anything we need you to do, which might be to keep reporting it. It might be to, if you've got a doorbell or something, to send us, all those kind of things. So it's not, 3 times and then we'll pay attention. It should be right from the get-go.
Okay, thank you.
Spencer, did you have anything, questions or comments at all?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think one of the few things that probably unites the 42 councillors on this authority is that we get reports of antisocial behaviour pretty regularly. And I think I've not spoken to the other 41, but what I'm sure unites all of us is that frustration you've outlined, Greg. We all know there ain't enough coppers knocking around. We know this. We'll have 4 hours of arguments at council meetings as to why and whose fault it was, but we all know that there aren't enough coppers knocking around. That's why when we resumed control in 2018, we as Liberal Democrats insisted that people's rents went on wardens, so that wardens could access the blocks, because they couldn't beforehand, and that made us double the number of wardens. Is it enough? No. Are there enough police? No. Does the system work? In my view, no. I think one of the issues that's outlined in the report from Colette is actually the number of people who want the council to do something, when very often it can't be the council that does something. And it's about being open and straight with that. And again, I think this is just, like many of these reports, just being honest with people, the people whose rents pay everybody's wages, about what's going on and about what we have to do and what's realistic about it. I think that expectation management is really quite important. I mean, I regularly get complaints, I'm sure Spencer and Derek do as well, of people who are going, my upstairs neighbour's noisy, and what are you going to do about it? And then we go through the process of the law and the environmental law, and then they find out that, that neighbour's been told that, some equipment's going in, and immediately that neighbour goes down and says, you've shopped me, even when it hasn't been said who it is. And that creates real and genuine problems, and that's something the team has to manage, even though it's not the team's fault. And that's really difficult, and I think that's where all 42 of us have to try and, we'll fight for all our residents, but we've also got to try and be realistic about what can and can't be done. And I think it's good that things are going generally in the right direction, team, which is good. I'm pleased we've got our own antisocial behaviour policy. If we could do that for everything else, that'd be great. I do want to come back to Greg's point about hate crime. In my view, and recollections and opinions may vary, hate crime is increasing in our city. There are more attacks on mosques in the country. We have our Jewish friends, many of whom feel uneasy at the rise in anti-Semitism, both of which are wrong. We're all human, we're all equal, and we're all different, and we're all human at heart. There was an assault outside the Somers Town, there's been an allegation of assault which has led to a charge outside the Somers Town hub. There have also been other incidents that have been reported and charged and taken to court and everything else across the country with other people too. On South Sea Seafront, we know this. Everybody is equal Everybody is different. And that's why it's important that people feel safe. And that's why I think it's very good that we're going to have a separate discussion of hate crime. People need to feel safe in their homes, regardless of their accidents of birth or their accidents of religion or their accidents of gender or anything like that. People deserve to feel safe in their own homes. And that's why I think this is quite important. And I know, it's, again, that's one of the few things that unites the 42 elected councillors. I think. If it doesn't, they should be shot. But there we go. So on that basis, Alison, I think we can do that. And I think coming back, Colette, with other reports would be very, very good, because this is really important, I think, for all our residents to feel safe in their own homes. Yeah. Okie doke. So we move to that one. So we've done that one. Next one that's interlinked is the landlord complaints update. Who got this in rehearsals? Sally, your rehearsals, I should say.
Thank you. So this is an information-only report. The purpose of the report is to provide an update to members on the Portsmouth Homes Landlord Complaints Annual Report. It includes a summary of the Housing Ombudsman's complaint policy review, outlines our recommendations, and presents the amendments made to Portsmouth Homes Complaints Policy in response to that review. It includes an update to the Housing Ombudsman's self-assessment and also includes an update on the Housing Ombudsman Landlord Performance Report. So just to give some background to the complaints process for Portsmouth Homes, prior to the 1st of April 2024, complaints about Portsmouth City Council housing services were dealt with by the city's corporate complaints team and under the corporate complaints policy. However, to comply with the Housing Ombudsman's complaint code responsibility for landlord complaints passed to Portsmouth Homes with effect from April 2024. Identified learnings from the first year of the new process are currently being reviewed and will be used to make changes to the process where needed. The analysis of complement and complaints data is enabling the service to identify where learnings need to be shared across teams and where there are training development opportunities. Relevant training sessions are planned and will be delivered to frontline staff and those responsible for responding to complaints over the coming months. Training will continue on a regular basis to ensure that we remain up to date with any changes in process, policy or Ombudsman guidance that comes out. Section 4 covers Portsmouth Homes Annual Complaint and Complement Report. In the 24-25 financial year, Portsmouth Homes received 249 complaints about landlord services. This equates to approximately 14.35 complaints per 1,000 homes, or 1.43% of the total housing stock. Of these, 127 complaints were related to the repairs team, which actually completed over 40,000 repairs during that same period. So this results in around 3.14 complaint per 1,000 repairs, or just 0.31% of all repairs carried out, demonstrating a relatively low complaint rate in the context of overall service delivery. Portsmouth Homes also logged a total of 1,364 antisocial behaviour cases. Of these, 22 resulted in formal complaints, equating to approximately 16.13 complaint per 1,000 cases, or 1.61% of all ASB cases. And this again indicates that the vast majority of ASB cases were managed without escalation to a formal complaint. Section 4 talks about the number of complaints and the types of complaint that we received. So out of all of the complaints that were received at stage 1 of the formal process, 138 were responded to within the complaint handling code timescales set out by the Housing Ombudsman. 30 complaints required extensions, and this represents 55% of all stage 1 complaints. 79 complaints went over the 10 working day timescale, and an extension was not requested in those cases. In Q1, data was recorded using a different system that didn't track all response times, and as a result, the timescale data is missing for around 32 complaints. At stage 2 of the process, 19 complaints were escalated to this point of the process. 15 were responded to within the required timescales, including 7 with extensions. This equates to a 79% compliance rate at stage 2. The remaining 4 complaints that went over the 20 working day timescale and an extension was not requested in those cases. So Portsmouth Homes acknowledge that the current response times are below the expected standards in some of our cases, and we're actively working to improve this so that we have a more consistent compliance across all our complaints in terms of response times. And our residents will be working with us. In fact, I think they've done some work in October to review the complaints process and help us to shape what that needs to look like going forward. Section 5 sets out some data on our compliments. So during the same period of the complaints, we received 41 compliments. 18 were for the area housing office teams, 4 for the green and clean teams, 7 for our resident engagement colleagues, and 12 for repairs and maintenance. And more detail can be seen in Appendix A. Section 7 deals with the Housing Ombudsman's complaints policy review. So the Housing Ombudsman will routinely review landlords' complaints policies and guidance to ensure that our policies align with their complaints handling code and reflects what residents can reasonably expect from a well-structured and transparent complaints process. In January this year, the Ombudsman requested Portsmouth Homes documents to complete a review. Portsmouth Homes received the outcome of this review in July, recommending that 26 changes to improve the landlord complaints policy were made. Most of the recommendations focused on specific wording changes within the policy, and these changes have now been updated accordingly. And it should be noted that those changes, for the most part, were more around just wording, not significantly altering the purpose of the policy or the meaning of the policy. Section 8 describes the work that's been done on the Housing Ombudsman's self-assessment. So in addition to the policy review, the complaints team is responsible for updating Portsmouth Homes self-assessment annually to ensure full compliance with the Housing Ombudsman's complaint handling code. As part of our review of the 2024 self-assessment, we identified 4 areas where we previously did not meet the required criteria, but we are now able to demonstrate full compliance. These include the publication of our reasonable adjustments policy and unreasonable behaviour policy, both of which are aligned with the Equality Act 2010. We have also appointed a member responsible for complaints who now receives quarterly updates on complaints data, learning and trends. The self-assessment has been updated accordingly and will be reviewed, signed off and submitted to the Housing Ombudsman, which we're required to do annually. Section 9 outlines the Housing Ombudsman Landlord Performance Report. So if a resident remains unhappy following a stage 2 complaint investigation, or indeed at any point during the complaint process, we will signpost them to the Housing Ombudsman. And during this period, 8 determinations from the Housing Ombudsman were received. Of the determinations, a total of 8 cases were reviewed. Findings across these cases produced 17 recommendations. A national comparison, the average maladministration rate for landlords of a similar size is 80%. Portsmouth Homes performance, we had 9 maladministration findings, resulting in a rate of just 56%, which is a significantly better outcome, as you will see, than the national average. In the 2023-24 period, our maladministration rate was 80%, indicating a marked improvement this year. The Ombudsman found no fault in 35% of our cases, compared to a national average of just 13%. I think that is it. So happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Sally. Greg and Mandy, do you have any questions or comments at all?
No, I don't.
No, none from me either.
No. And please can I thank the Residents Consortium for their help in putting all this together and making sure this is robust. I'm very grateful to you. Spencer, do you have anything at all?
Thank you.
No, Derek, nothing?
Nothing from me.
Sorry, I just assumed there was nothing. I apologise for that. It's just there shouldn't be. Thanks very much for this. I have one question. We've had 249 complaints. How many calls does the service receive every week?
I unfortunately don't have that total number, but it is, you know, I've given some context there to the number of repairs that we receive, for instance, and the number of ASB cases, but we will also receive hundreds and hundreds more. I don't know if Steve's got an idea of how many repairs calls we might take through the repair centre.
Yeah, we take through the call centre for repairs alone, we take in the region of about 1,800 to 2,000 calls a week.
A week?
Yeah.
2,000 calls a week. And 250 complaints throughout the whole year. Interesting. Every complaint that comes is important. It has to be dealt with properly, and I'm delighted our maladministration rate is lower than others. But that just provides some context to where we are. And as the member who oversees complaints, that's also something that I'm interested in. So I'm grateful to you for that. Thank you very much for a thorough report, Sally. That's excellent. And I'm pleased that we provided some context to the complaint system as well. So I think that is duly noted, Alison. Okay. So the final two reports we've got are in the same boat. Again, these were decisions taken by the Chief Executive under the pre-election period approach after essentially myself, in consultation with my opposition colleagues, basically approved them. Because they should have come to our meeting in late September, so apologies for that. I blame the by-election. We'll deal with that later. So there we go. But they're here now in the interest of openness and transparency, and that covers both the damp and mould policy and electrical safety policy. So whoever wishes to deal with. Can we take both of those together? Because I just think they're just sort of overlapping. I know you've got 3 speeches, Steve. So, but if they're going to be overlapped, because they do overlap, that'd be great.
So I'll do the first one, which is on the damp and mould policy update. So as you've outlined, this is an information-only report. The purpose is to update Cabinet regarding the updated damp and mould policy that has been approved and outlines our approach to managing damp and mould in response to Awaab's law. The report goes through the background of all the previous damp and mould policies that we've updated, so it's not a new thing, it's an update of a previous policy, and also outlines Awaab's law, which came into force on the 27th of October 2025. From this point, social landlords have to address all emergency hazards and all damp and mould hazards that present significant risk of harm to tenants to fixed timeframes. With regard to consultation, we consulted with the Resident Consortium Repairs Focus Group, updated them about the new legislation and the changes to the damp and mould policy on the 21st of August 2024. And the residents' feedback included clarifying the process proposed in the policy and the remedial action to resolve different types of damp and mould that they had experienced in their homes. The resident focus group also highlighted the role of contractors to report damp and mould, and that is something that we've taken on board to include in our implementation plan, recognising that contractors do a number of visits to all of our properties and have a responsibility to also report any damp and mould that they find. The implementation plan has been updated and includes that alongside other measures that we're going to take into account. The report also outlines the specifics in the legislation and how the damp and mould policy will focus on those, or has been updated in some of those key areas. So some of the key areas are, for instance, the surveyor inspection. There's now a requirement to investigate any potential significant hazards within 10 working days of becoming aware of them, and investigate any potential emergency hazards within 24 hours. And should also consider the household and assessing any circumstances or vulnerabilities that might have a particular impact because of the presence of damp and mould. That technically we were doing a lot of that apart from the it's just really we had it as 14 calendar days and we're now changed that to 10 working days. The other part of the legislation now is a new requirement, which is to produce a written summary of the investigation and the findings, and send that to the tenant within 3 working days of the conclusion of the investigation. And that is a new requirement, so that keeps the resident clearly updated about what the findings were and what the next steps are. The legislation also talks around requirements for the repairs. So, for instance, when an emergency hazard has been identified, we should undertake the work within 24 hours, so that fits into our emergency category for repairs. And if a significant hazard is identified, we have a responsibility to undertake those repairs within 5 working days. In the policy, we have kept it to our urgent repair category, which means we'd actually be doing those repairs within 3 working days, which is quicker than the legislation requires. The legislation also talks about landlords being expected to follow up to confirm the completion of any recurring issues like mould. And within the policy, we outline that we will do a callback within 6 months just to make sure that there has been no reoccurrence and we have actually solved the situation. Obviously, damp and mould can be quite problematic, and sometimes there's a number of factors that can influence it. And sometimes it might take several attempts to actually address the root cause of the issue. And then the legislation also talks about landlords being expected to routinely inspect properties and identify risks like damp and mould before tenants report them. And within the policy, we recognise that and talk about proactively reviewing damp and mould across cases across our stock, and using energy performance information and other intelligence, reviewing the performance data from damp and mould itself to target particular properties so that we can proactively address some of the issues. The report then goes on to talk about the implementation plan, and some of the key parts of that is we've updated our posters and leaflets. So again, to make sure that we can get that out there and make sure that residents are aware of how to report any damp and mould and the importance of reporting the damp and mould. We've updated all of our staff, so they've been communicated so that everybody's aware, and that's around making sure that any of our staff that are doing any visits to council properties are aware of what to do with it. They don't have to solve the issue, but it's about identifying it and then reporting that so that we can keep residents safe. We've done quite a lot of work with our stakeholders. That includes our core group of contractors to explore how we can engage with the operatives to make them aware when they're in properties that they can identify the damp and mould, but also with our housing management colleagues as part of their tenancy update visits, and utilising those opportunities to also look at the property and identify if there's any issues that need to be reported to the repairs team. And then finally, the surveyors, we've done a number of training sessions with the team to update them about the changes to the legislation, make sure they're fully aware of how the policy has been changed. And we've done quite a lot of work with our IT developers to update our repairs and maintenance database so that the surveyors, when they're out in the field, can actually do the survey report whilst they're in the property with a IT form. That once they've saved that sends a letter that can go straight out to the tenants. So what we actually know already within the first few weeks, 100% of the visits we've done have had a letter by the next working day, because we've made it as effective as we can so that there's no delay in getting that information out to the residents. And then the final bit is that we're updating all of our dashboards to make sure that we can review and monitor the performance of how we perform against damp and mould and make sure we're meeting all the legislation requirements. So if I hand over to Amy, she'll talk about the electrical one.
Thank you. So I'm presenting the information only report for the new electrical safety policy, and that is really in response to the electrical safety standards in the private rented sector England amendment, which is an extension to the social housing rented sector regulations 2025. In terms of background, under the Housing Act, social landlords have a responsibility to manage electrical safety and ensure there are no Category 1 hazards under the Housing Health and Safety Rating System. And in private rented sector, there's been legislation requiring private rented landlords to undertake electrical inspection reports at a maximum of 5-year periods and ensure actions are completed. The new legislation, subject to this report, extends provisions to social sector, making it a legal requirement to undertake New tenancies have a new EICR prior to the tenancy start date, and that came into effect on the 1st of November. For existing tenancies to have an EICR that has been completed within 5 years from May the 1st, 2026, and the actions are completed, and PAT testing to electrical equipment provided by the landlord is undertaken. Alongside electrical regulation, AWAB's law was introduced, which initially brought in the legislation related to damp and mould. However, in 2026, the legislation will be extended to include a number of other areas, including electrical safety. In terms of consultation, the policy went to the policy focus group, and that consultation required no additional changes to the policy, and it is also being reviewed by the gas and electric panel members. Following the regulatory judgment, as part of our improvement plan, we have been focused on electrical safety and have already moved to largely meet with the new legislation. The key areas that we are undertaking are, we've already started the new tenancies to be issued with a 5-yearly EICR. We've accelerated the EICR programme with the aim of ensuring all properties will have an EICR within 5 years by the 1st of May. We already undertake the C1 and C2s at the time of the inspection, which are the most serious actions from the EICR. PAT testing requirements are being reviewed at the moment to understand where they need to be completed, and we are recording all actions on the database to enable monitor trends and the completion of the actions from the EICR. We will be issuing a copy of the EICR within 28 days of its completion to the residents for existing, and we're already providing it prior to a new tenancy start. In terms of implementation, we've already accelerated the EICR programme and have worked with the service providers to increase capacity to meet the 1st of May implementation date, and we are updating the dashboards to ensure we can monitor and report on compliance with the new legislation.
Thanks very much for that, Amy and Steve. Greg and Mandy, do you have any comments on either or both of those reports?
Yeah, Steve, damp and mould. There's a neighbour of mine who the workman went in for something else and noticed that she had damp and mould, reported back. She let them in and showed them, and they said, right, okay, we'll do this work, etc. But they pointed out the obvious. You need to have a little bit of ventilation in the room, all the general guidelines that, is in your leaflets that we've all seen. And she's absolutely refused. Her attitude is, I am not having my bedroom window open in the winter. What's the point of having the heating on if I've got to have my window open a little bit? Blah, 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 blah. My question really is, how many times, if they're not listening to the advice given, how many times you're going to go back, you're going to put it right, obviously to cost to yourselves? Is there a consequence that eventually you would need to say something about to her?
Yeah, there's no limit on how many times we go back. What I'd like to think is that we would go back and look at the circumstances. So again, we'd be able to see that there'd been perhaps a previous occurrence. There may be some other factors, and it might be where we're bringing in housing management to help because there might be some support or other means that we need to support that tenant. So I think that the key part of the policy and the key change over the last sort of couple of years, it's not just about a technical solution, it's about looking at every aspect of it, about how the residents live in, what support can we give them, are they having trouble with their energy bills, can we point them in the direction of Switch on Portsmouth and get some advice about how they can heat their property well. And it is about continuing just to keep trying to educate as well alongside that, as well as looking, have we done all the technical bits that we can do? And that might be, sometimes there's not always a technical solution, and sometimes we have to go hand in hand with other ways of supporting those tenants.
I mean, the main reason I raise it is because she's an elderly lady, she's 83, and I mean, in her day it was all different. They didn't understand about all these things. So from sort of late October, everything's all closed up, bogged down, and that's it then till spring. And I know it is something that her daughter-in-law is quite concerned because the elderly lady has got breathing problems as it is. So obviously doesn't need to be living with that. The main reason I asked is because she does trust me, she confides in me a lot. So then I can sort of reassure her, well, okay, if you are struggling, so I can take what you've said back to us, Steve. Thank you.
We would definitely go back, and I think, like, you know, just as a general point, I think ventilating rooms is something that is counterintuitive to most people, that they think I'm going to be cold and such like, but actually that is a really important part, and sometimes it's just about us looking at how we can get that message across to those tenants and support them.
Yeah, I think that's the message. So as Steve says, you know, in terms of, particularly with somebody who may be more vulnerable, that's what the housing teams are there to do. So I'll work hand in hand with Steve's team to provide the support, the information, because part of it, as you say, is about educating people. And it is also not just about the ventilation, but it's about keeping that minimum temperature in the property as well. So it is that fine balance. But it is definitely something that the housing officer can support and have those conversations with people to try and get them to understand the need for it, and also pick up on any other support needs that somebody might have.
And
It can be difficult, but I think, again, this is another reason why we will be doing more frequently those home visits on the part of the housing officer, so that we are picking up on those people that perhaps are struggling in different ways, and we can have those conversations in a more, you know, decent time frame rather than waiting till something goes wrong. We're able to get in there and nip things in the bud much quicker and work with our maintenance colleagues to try and get things resolved. And you're right, it can be difficult, but I think so long as we bring in the right support and have the right conversations, we do usually manage to get at least to a compromise situation.
thanks for that. Spencer, did you have anything at all? No. Derek?
Not for me, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for both of these reports. It's a shame the law has to be changed courtesy of a coroner in Rochdale, but that was the main driver for AWAB's law, which is now in place rightfully at long last. We do know, as Mandy and Greg have outlined, that damp and mould is a real problem for many people, and sometimes people just don't do what they should do. Steve, has this been an issue, are the issues Mandy outlined, have they been raised with the regulator? Because the regulator's just looking at the numbers, as opposed to like individual cases like, I don't want to do this. Is it an issue that's been raised with the regulator?
It hasn't been raised with the regulator. We certainly, part of the analysis we're doing, and certainly the more we do this, the more we can look at how many of these are we going back to, are we picking up the same issues and that sort of stuff. So we haven't really done that analysis, but the data will be there once we get through this year. We'll see how many repeat cases we're going back to, and whether there are particular ones that we need to perhaps bring in housing management or whatever to help us get those messages across. But we haven't done anything with that at this stage.
Okay, I think that might be useful once we actually know that data, because again, it's like the access issue we started with. The regulator's not really interested in you know, whether you can't access the property or whether the person won't do anything. It's what we can do, because certainly we want to try and make sure we have as early action as possible. I know we commented on a recent paper by a law firm being really concerned about solicitors pocketing money from disrepair claims as opposed to like normal people receiving compensation. We want to try and avoid that, because certainly we're not here to make solicitors happy, we're here to make council tenants happy. But so those two reports are fine, I think, and I look forward to seeing updates frequently, but it does show the difference between trying to satisfy the new legal criteria and with access, some of the stuff Mandy said, people's freedom perhaps to do things they shouldn't do. And on that despairing note, that is the meeting done and dusted at 4:45 p.m. Thank you, political colleagues. I look forward to seeing you on Sunday at the Remembrance Service and at the undiluted pleasure of the council meeting next Tuesday.